I'm Alex Howard.
And I'm Amanda Silver. And this is Dirty Laundry. So I just have to say that sometimes when you're reading bios, you have a tendency.
Is season 3 about confessionals?
I think we should.
Oh. All right. What do I do when I read bios?
Forgive me, Ryan, for I have sinned.
What did I do now?
No, I don't know if any of you like pick up on this, but sometimes when you're doing bios, you sound a little bit like a 1950s commercial.
Oh.
Like you're just like very chipper.
Okay.
It's like, and this will make your whites even whiter. Welcome to Dirty Laundry. And I'm just like, no.
You are very frank about
I'm like, no, that's not it. That's just not
so
for us.
Is that not my regular personality? Like, am I day to day walking around like
no,
a 1950s
and that's
housewife?
why I say it. If it was, I would. No, it's just like sometimes you're like reading voice or you're like presenting voice. You're like presenting voice is very like 1950s. Like I've got like a little like apron on and like this is how you clean your house.
Is that because I do my power pose first?
I don't know. I don't know what it is, but. Write us in. Let us know if you hear that as well, especially in the first few seasons.
And what else do I do that bothers you?
No, it doesn't bother me.
It's just so fun. No, I love
observation.
Room for improvement.
That's it. You're practically perfect in every way, just like Mary Poppins.
That's so cute. I love professional and personal development, so I'm here to learn.
What do I do? Come on, give it to me straight.
I think we did talk about this in season 2 where you always cut me off and then I laugh. And then we have like a complete tangent. And I'm like, what was I
is that still a problem?
Well, because my pathetic Dory brain, once I'm off on a tangent, ain't no chance I'm coming back.
Am I still interrupting you as much?
I don't know. I haven't noticed. So I guess that means no.
Okay. See, I was waiting for you to talk, so I didn't interrupt you.
And I was waiting to think about it.
So maybe you do need to be interrupted. Sometimes you do. Sometimes you do because we both do. And I appreciate it. Sometimes we'll go off on I don't know where we end up, but we need to be brought back.
We need to be.
All the joys of, podcasting. Not as simple as it seems.
It's not as easy as we make it seem.
It's not as easy.
We have a very hard job. No, we have the best job. The people we get to talk to, the stories we get to hear, we're so friggin' lucky. Yeah. And speaking of stories, who have we got on today?
On today's episode, we have Nikki Tucker, who has spent 16 years as a divorce financial strategist. Her work is mostly helping women work through their finances and figure out next steps in terms of their divorce. So we are so excited to have Nikki on and share her expertise with us. So welcome. Okay, so welcome, Nikki, to Dirty Laundry. Zooming in all the way from Chicago. Yeah. We've had a lot of Chicagoans. We talked about this earlier. Chicagoans on our show. So it's great. So welcome. Yeah, we'd love to hear about what you do in your background before we sort of get started and delve in.
Yeah, delve into those hard-hitting questions.
Such hard-hitting
questions. We'll start with a low ball. Just tell us about yourself.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. I'm very excited just to have the conversation. Love the energy that you all bring to the podcasting space. So it makes for good fun to listen and just engage. I'm the founder of the FIIRM approach. And so I serve women as a speaker, a blogger, personal financial strategist. I'm also a CDFA, which is a certified divorce financial analyst. So all of these things. But essentially, I teach women how to protect themselves, protect their financial security, help them to understand that doing really simple things like being organized, transparent, intentional with their finances is ultimately beneficial to them, whether they are partnered or not.
Right.
And I've been in the financial space for over 20 years, actually, both on the commercial side and the personal side. So I have a particular lens because of the type of transactions and transitions that I've seen, where I've been able to help people who want to just come out on the other side of whatever it is they're going through, be okay. Yeah. And regardless of whether someone has accumulated wealth, they come from wealth, or they don't even know what wealth is, they essentially have one thing in common, and they're just trying to figure out how do they protect what they have in place.
I love that.
That's who I am and what I do.
I started following this account recently, and it was like tweets from my teen or texts from my teens, from like my teenage kids, basically. And one of them was, "What is generational wealth, and how do I get it?" And I just thought, man, if only we all knew the secret to that, it would be a very different conversation.
That's
how do I get it? What is it, and do we have it?
That's so let's start though from a young age, like from the beginning. So maybe teens, or maybe a little later. Now people are getting married, like, or partnering up later in life. They're sort of prioritizing maybe more of their career or their education. So how do people sort of set themselves up for success, in their 20s, let's say?
I think it's about being informed. So being informed and being engaged. And I think being engaged is very different from being financially literate. So we talk about financial literacy a lot, and that's fine, just to have the baseline of information. But it takes a level of intention and engagement with your money in order to stay on top of it, stay on track. Yeah. Again, recognize some of the things that you have, some of the goals that you have. If you want to be wealthy, if those are one of your goals. And so in this day and age, it's really important to be engaged and understand. So if we think about people going into relationships, obviously I have like the divorce lens often.
Yeah. As do we. Yeah. Yes.
So we think about the divorce lens, and whether you are single, you are dating, you are happily married, or even post-divorce. One of the things that you can do is think about your finances from the perspective of if you were getting divorced or if you were getting married with a prenup. And what I mean by that is there's a process that you have to go through when you're getting ready to sign a prenup or when you're getting ready to divorce. You have to disclose a whole bunch of information, financial information. In order for you to disclose the information, you have to know it. You have to collect it, right?
Yes.
And so whether we're talking about pulling your credit report or just understanding everything you own and everything you owe, you can do that by just completing a personal financial statement. And that doesn't have to be anything formal. You can do it in Excel. You can do it on the back of a napkin if you want to, but something that says, I understand my financial picture regardless of my marital status. And you can do that and track your progress from the time you're in your 20s for the rest of your life. And I do it on a quarterly basis for myself because I like to see where my money is going and how my money is growing. So
you mentioned prenups. This has a terrible reputation. I'm a big fan of them, generally speaking. I am also a wedding officiant. You don't know this, but I marry people as well as divorce them. And I always ask, hey, where's your prenup? Like, I'm trying to really normalize it because it doesn't have to be this horrible, your marriage is destined for failure if you have a prenup. It's actually just a really smart way to protect yourself, protect your partner, protect, if there is generational wealth, even if there's nothing. Just having conversations around finances before you get married is so crucial. So again, how do we make this more common? What do you see in your practice? Are you encouraging folks to get prenups regardless of wealth? What does that look like for you?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I am pro prenup from the mountaintops. I'm shouting it all day long to whoever I can get to listen, including my kid. So he's pro prenup already, even though he's single. But I think the things that you said are really important. So ideal candidates for a prenup to me are couples who have an income disparity. So one partner made significantly more than the other partner. There's consideration for someone being the non-moneyed spouse in the marriage. So you're going to be a stay-at-home mom or stay-at-home wife, or if your financial philosophies are very different, so your values and the way you think about money, if that's different, if you have children from a previous relationship, I think that's a good way to protect yourselves with a prenup. And then also if you have a business or just other property that you own. So if you think about women, especially whether they've been married before or not, if you have had a successful career, you've managed to be really good with money, you own your home, or owning mean you're not renting, doesn't necessarily mean you don't have a mortgage. You don't want to confuse people with that.
But the bank owns a lot of houses.
You own a home with the bank.
With the bank, right? Your partners.
Yeah, your partners. Yes.
But if we think about it from a very basic standpoint, It's great to be in love. I love love. So even though I'm in the divorce industry, I'm pro marriage and I'm pro love. However, I'm also all about being rational. And so when you're having the right conversations about money, it is very realistic to bring up the prenup topic. And particularly for women, because that's who I primarily work with, I want women to think about certain circumstances that come up when you're going through a divorce. So, for example, you fall in love with someone, you own a home, and let's say your partner doesn't. And you say, okay, well, you can move in with me. Well, what are the consequences of that? What's going to happen to the property if you add your spouse's or soon to be spouse's name to the deed? What if you decide to sell your house and your partner or soon to be spouse sells their home and then you buy a new house together? But the split isn't necessarily 50-50 because the money that you have isn't the same. Do you want like the pro rata portion of that money out of the house when you get a divorce? Like these are like technical nuances that nobody wants to think about before they get married, but they can be ironed out in a prenup, which is why I love prenups. So the great thing about them is that it's intended to protect both parties. They get a bad rep because people hear about, oh, this got thrown out, some salacious story in celebrity news, and something wasn't fair. Someone ended up being left with absolutely nothing. That those are the exceptions to prenup stories. It's not the rule. And so as long as they're fair, again, someone is disclosing all of their personal financial information and they're legally signed, witnessed by someone, you're generally going to be safe from a prenup perspective. And you can iron out some of the details about how you want things to be arranged in your marriage. And then how you want things to be arranged if your marriage ends. So they have way more upside.
Now, what about if, let's stay on the topic for one more second. You've got a prenup. Now things change drastically within the marriage. Maybe the person that was not making as much money or came into the relationship with less now has more. How does that then affect things? Because, if that was me, I'd be like, well, wait just a minute. Things have really shifted. Is this something that you should be updating throughout the marriage? Or is it just pre-marriage and then, you're kind of SOL and Bob's your uncle?
No, you can update it. And if you don't have one in the beginning, you can also have one after. It's called a postnup. So you make the arrangements on the front end with the prenup.
Smart.
You make changes to it if you need to. And if you didn't do one in the beginning, it's not like it's too late and you missed your chance. Then you can have a postnup. So if circumstances change, then you can talk about having the agreement that still keeps someone protected because things maybe are more lopsided than they were
I would
before.
assume that a prenup would expect for income to go up, let's say, for there to be growth. So I would assume there's clauses in there. Like you're not locked in to what it was when you got married. You're getting married young and you both don't have much, let's say, and then one person's growth is quite significant. I would assume there's clauses in there for that.
Yeah, you can account for that. So you have the flexibility where things are not necessarily so prescriptive.
Right.
And you're accounting for different considerations and there's some flexibility in there. And so when I say change it, I'm really referencing to now you would kind of end up with a postnup. But yeah, you can account for that in the prenup.
All right. So we've kind of tackled the before marriage. During your marriage, Nikki, what is your advice for couples? Do they have shared finances? Do they have their own finances totally separate? Is it a mixed bag? What have you found that really sets folks up for success?
I have very strong feelings about this.
We love strong feelings on Dirty Laundry. We love it.
Give it to us.
So my short answer is both. Okay. It's fine to have joint accounts. No issue with that. It is not necessary for everything to be joint. So combination of joint and separate, I think is necessary. One, there is no doubt in my mind that there's a sense of freedom and empowerment when you have full autonomy over something related to money. So it may not be all of the money that's coming into the household, but there's a little portion that's carved out for you and you get to decide when you want to buy a latte or when you want to buy a bag. Whatever it is, you can do what you want to do with it. And I think it's important, as it talks about, like I'm really focused on helping women protect their financial security. A part of being financially secure means that you are informed. You are aware. and you are owning the power that you have. Okay. So if you're married, you want to be involved in financial decisions. You want to make sure that you have access to all accounts, all mail, all email, all bank accounts. Even if you are a stay-at-home mom, a stay-at-home wife, whatever it is, lessen the dependency for another human being, even if it's your spouse, to give you information. You need to be able to go in and get it when you want to. Even if you decide I never want to look at it, you just want to have the ability to, should you do so. So I feel very strongly about that.
So in that instance then of the anecdote you gave of one of the partners being at home and the other one being the sole breadwinner, let's say, what does your own individual finances look like at that point? Are you getting, I hate to use the word allowance because again, it's infantilizing, but are you getting some sort of monetization for the work you're doing at home, whether it's raising children or just managing the home? How would you set people up then so that this awkwardness that I already feel even asking this question can be avoided entirely? Yeah, for those that don't have income of their own from working outside of the home. For those that work inside the home, what does that look like?
There is no black and white answers to this. So everyone's situation is going to be very unique based on what makes sense for your family. Okay. I do think that, again, it's important for something to be carved out for you. So if you, in the example that you provided, if the person is not engaged in some kind of side hobby or side business or gig that gives them any money on their own to control, if the stay-at-home wife or mom needs to take care of business for the household and also take care of herself, then there's an agreement that there is a certain portion of money, from my perspective, that should go into a separate account. That's it. You have to decide what it is. There is no stated amount, but I think that there is connectivity to what you said with the prenup conversation, because again, there's value in your contribution.
It's almost like paying yourself a salary, like deciding on what you're paying yourself a salary from the pool, right? Let's say he's bringing home the money, but you're raising the kids and doing all the things and contributing to the home. Yeah. Paying yourself a salary.
So deciding together with
what
your
that
partner
number is, which can be probably a tough conversation, but it's important to have that in the beginning because then you avoid these tougher issues later.
So having that conversation, having a separate bank account so that you're, maybe an automatic withdrawal right into, so you're not having to worry about it, but that you do have some autonomy over a chunk of money that's just yours.
Maybe it's a percentage of the income that's coming in.
It just comes back to the stigma of not respecting people that work in the home, that don't have their own job. And I think if we could actually flip that and say, no, this is valuable work. I couldn't do, if I'm the breadwinner, I couldn't do my job if I didn't have someone at home taking care of everything else for me. So that is a worthwhile. So it needs to start, this conversation needs to happen more and more often where we are empowering those who choose to stay. And quite frankly, that's incredible if you can. To me, it seems like a luxury.
It. I think there needs to be we need to quantify how much that is worth in dollars and cents.
And maybe it's a percentage of household revenue.
It could be a percentage,
And the percentage piece, I think, is key because that's easier than setting up a flat amount. Because if there's fluctuation in income or fluctuation in expenses, then you have some flexibility there too. But also understanding how much cash flow is actually available. So that's why I said it's not necessarily black and white where everyone's number will be the same. But depending on how your buckets are falling with what are your fixed expenses and things that have to be paid to keep the lights on and food in the belly. And then all of these other things that may be discretionary. And it's definitely a conversation that has to be had, but a percentage is probably the easiest way to go.
So with that, Nikki, some of your work talks about this idea about being financially compatible, not just in love. When you get to the old altar, what does that mean? Talk to us about that.
Yeah, well, financial compatibility has very little to do with income, and I think a lot of people get caught up in the numbers of how much one person is making versus how much the other person is making. That's not what it's about. It has much more to do with values and philosophy. So if you think about the individual money story that each of us has, which accounts for your experiences, your emotions, your actual feelings that come up when you have money conversations. Like we said a few minutes ago, you were a little uncomfortable just bringing up that question.
Yeah.
When we think about the motives or what triggers you to spend or how you handle money, all of those things are part of every person's money story. And so when we get into conversations about financial compatibility, we're trying to make sure that you understand your own money story and that you understand your partner's money story. And that will make the management of money in your relationship much easier. So what's important to you? Is it family time? Is it tithing or giving back to the community? Is it traveling? Is it new experiences? What's your philosophy? Are you adverse to risk? Do you understand risk? How organized are you? Do you prioritize spending over saving? All of these things have a very direct implication to the most important areas of your financial life that we all have. So how do you budget money? How do you feel about debt? How much debt do you take on? How do you protect your money with insurance? Do you have the right insurance in place? Are you ready for retirement? And then how do you handle taxes?
I love
Those are the big buckets that we all kind of share.
So ask that on the first date.
It's going to be super romantic. No, but I think it's so important. I'm obsessed with this idea because we don't have these conversations at all when we're newly dating someone or even getting serious, right? We're sooner to be like, hey, let's move in versus let's talk about our money. And as you pointed out, I am awful with it.
And there's so much to consider and so much
there's
your retirement
so much.
plans.
Oh my God, I can't even think about that. But I remember when I first started dating my now husband, I remember being like, oh, you are so financially responsible. You are the antithesis to me, if I'm being totally honest. Like if I've got it, I'm spending it. If I don't, I could live like a poor pauper for my whole life. But if I've got it, it's gone. I love spending money. And so I found someone intentionally or maybe subconsciously intentionally that is great at budgeting, great at being fiscally responsible. And I was like, this is going to work out because I've got other strengths. I'm not just, poo-pooing myself, but this is not one of them. So even just having some self-awareness, like you said, understanding your own spending and saving habits, and then trying to find somebody that aligns with that. It's very much like a love language thing, right?
Yes.
Like, and what worries me is that when you are dating, we often tell a lot of, I don't want to say lies, but like
embellishments, false truths.
Yeah, embellishments is good. Like I love travel. Meanwhile, maybe my love language is actually no, like I want gifts. I need you to be buying material things for me. But you're in this like wooing phase of your, dating and your romance.
And you're not going to be so forthcoming.
And maybe
about your,
you're not as honest.
Financial habits, let's just say. Or all of your habits, right?
If you do a lot of retail therapy, maybe that's not what you lead with when you're dating. So how do we get to that point of like, self-awareness, being really honest about your habits and maybe your goals and finding somebody who could support those goals, right? It doesn't have to just be like, well, this is who I am, so I'm never going to change or grow or make any sort of effort to be somebody that I want to, achieve these goals at. So finding somebody maybe that can help you get there. Now that could be somebody professionally like yourself, or that could be in your love partner. But really just being able to be open and honest. And I guess maybe if you can't, that's not the partner for you. I don't know. Now I'm rambling. Jump in, Nikki, please, with something.
Well, I think it comes back to some of the things that we were just talking about earlier. So what you're doing as an individual, just to set yourself up for success throughout your life when it comes to your money, now you're doing it as a couple. So if we take the softer things that I just said, talking about your money story, talking about your values and philosophy, but then you also take the tactical nitty gritty piece of, okay, let me see your credit report.
Right. Wow.
Does it make you
Uber
uncomfortable
rating in your credit report? I want to see both.
But yeah, let's swap credit reports. Or maybe we don't necessarily need to swap bank statements so you can see all the details. But if we're planning to get married, and this is where you have to be comfortable with getting uncomfortable. If we're planning to get married and we're joining our money, why wouldn't we be able to swap bank statements?
So true.
Why can't I actually see that the bank balance you say you have, you actually have on paper, right? And then when you are thinking about what this person has told you about their values, or like you said, you love to travel, but doesn't look like you've taken a trip in a long time, right? Or you really believe in savings. That's what you're telling me. And I see that you have $1,000 in your savings account, but you've been working in corporate for 25 years. Like certain things don't add up.
Yeah.
So now you can have conversations, and it's not from a judgmental perspective.
Yeah.
You're not accusing them of anything, but you're seeking to understand with the goal of having a successful, transparent relationship about money. So most people don't do this, but I think it's a worthwhile exercise to reduce the fights that you will likely have in a marriage, and you're kind of determining if it's going to be really big fights or if you're going to have really little fights, because oftentimes the fight is really about the person. It's usually connected to some deep rooted, possibly unresolved issues that you don't know about that's connected to money.
Nikki, talk to us about the FIIRM approach. This is kind of your baby, right? Tell us what this is all about.
It is. So the FIIRM approach is the name of my company.
Okay.
And I consider it to be a financial resource company. And what that means is we're connecting you to tools, information, modern resources that are available to women going through transitions in their lives, particularly divorce. But we provide a framework that helps women understand very important things. So FIIRM is an acronym, but it looks ugly with the dots, so I don't use the dots. But it's about being flexible, intentional, informed, resourceful, and masterful. And masterful doesn't mean perfect. It just means you're committed to the idea of making really important but strategic financial decisions.
I like this.
That's it.
So you do help people specifically in divorce. What does that look like for your practice?
Yeah, so it's helping them to understand what they can expect, because that's usually the big question. I've never been through this, although some people have a couple of times. That's okay too. But
no judgment.
What can I expect? How much is this going to cost me? And ultimately, how do I get started? Like, what's the first thing that I should do? And very often, it's thinking that you need to pick up the phone and call an attorney. And you get an attorney engaged sometimes prematurely. And I love divorce attorneys. They actually serve a purpose and a great, great resource in this space. However, I don't think that that's the first contact that should be made. And so when I'm talking to clients who are preparing for divorce, those are the things that we're discussing. Have you taken any consideration into what you want this to look like? So what are your intentions for the divorce? Do you want it to be more amicable and just try to get through this as cool and calm, as collect as you can possibly be? Or are you ready to fight? Do you want to duke it out? Like because that's some people's intention.
Absolutely. Unfortunately.
Do you want to drag it out? As your perspective, take him for everything he has, like just trying to figure out what is the intention. And that works the same for both genders. I'm usually working with women, so that's why I'm saying that, using that reference. But that's the first part of it. And then actively figuring out how to keep the cost down. And so I think a big part of keeping the cost down is understanding who can help you and the roles that they play. So once you know what you want, as far as how you want to get through this process, you understand that certain things are decided by law, especially if you don't have a prenup. So that means certain arguments are literally a waste of your time and therefore a waste of your money.
Brilliant.
Right? So I help clients understand that. And then, okay, have you engaged a therapist? Because I can guarantee you that you're going to be pissed off at some point during this process. And the person you need to vent to is not your attorney. Because that's a very expensive venting session. Right?
Bang.
Yes.
So I'm trying to help women understand those three important factors. Where do you start? What should you expect? How can you keep the cost down so that they get into the process and maybe the emotional roller coaster is a little less bumpy?
This is probably an unpopular opinion,
Ooh,
but what I'm
what is
thinking,
Share.
we have a lot of, Amanda and I do coaching as well. And we have a lot of folks that come to us with this whole idea of, do I stay or do I go, right? It's the eternal question of anybody who's in a relationship. And often then you're going to a couples counselor if there's issues in your marriage. You're like, well, I want to stay, I want to try, so we're going to go do this.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if it's also valuable for people to go and speak to someone like yourself to be like, hi, what is this going to cost me leaving? What can I expect on a single income, maybe with child support, without, like all of the nuance that comes with divorce, specifically related to finance, because you can talk to a therapist and be like, I don't know if I'm happy. You can write pro-con list of like, well, the good still outweighs the bad, so I'm going to stick it out and we're going to try But I wonder how many, and again, women, because we know historically not as financially, let's say, literate, secure, empowered, etc., would actually be way more empowered to leave if they understood their finances, as opposed to just the emotional. Because if you're making, let's say, this pro-con list, we're really only like, well, he snores and that's annoying. I haven't slept in 10 years, but, whatever. I'm obviously joshing. But to actually add the full comprehension of your finances.
That maybe you're going to be okay?
That maybe you would be okay on your own. Or maybe you wouldn't. Or maybe you get to that point and you're like, I would be okay, but I still don't want to. And that's fine. You're going to work it out and you're going to try.
Things are so unbearable that doesn't matter what the finances look like. I'm getting out, right?
Exactly.
But I think there are so many that are afraid to make that decision because they don't know.
Or they're making the decision with lack of information. Yeah. So to come to someone like yourself to say, okay, this doesn't have to mean I'm ready to leave my marriage. I just need to have a better understanding of what that would look like. And man, I bet you it would really change a lot of people's situations.
And that's exactly what I do. And even in some of the information on my website, one of the things I say is, it doesn't matter to me whether you get divorced or not. Right? So I'm not hoping for your marriage to end. I just want you to be as informed as possible should your marriage end. And to your point, the financial side of it is really, really important. But sometimes you also need to go to a discernment therapist, not a regular therapist, but a discernment therapist, because they can help you also figure out, should you stay or should you go? So whether you're talking to someone like me, whether you're talking to a divorce coach and individuals like you who are helping people through this very overwhelming process, or even a discernment therapist, doing the work up front will never hurt you. If you say, Nikki, I want to have a conversation and get the lay of the land for all those things you just said, and then you stay married, 9 times out of 10, you're not going to be pissed. You're not going to say, oh, I can't believe now I know how much it's going to cost me if I get divorced. Like, what do you have to be upset about?
So now true. I know. How dare I get that information? How dare I be informed?
And
you can do confidentially too, right? You can meet with someone like yourself or, a mediator or a family lawyer or what have you in a confidential way. You don't need to share that information with your spouse.
No, I think that's so brilliant. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah. Wow.
Yes.
So for those then going through divorce, they've decided they're leaving. Are you walking them through that process? Okay.
Yes. Walking them through that. And I have the financial lens, so I don't act like I'm an attorney because I'm not. But I do, in one of the programs that we offer, it's a digital resource, there are videos that you can see and hear directly from a divorce attorney. You can hear directly from a therapist about the role that they play in the process.
Very cool.
And the types of questions that you need to ask them in order to vet before you hire them. So that is a part of what I do, just in offering support.
I love
Absolutely.
That.
Wonderful. And how do people get in touch with you if they want to work with you?
Well, the website's the easiest way. So thefiirmapproach.com. FIIRM has 2 I's. So back to that, informed and intentional.
Right.
But FIIRM has 2 I's, and the website is the easiest way to get in touch with me.
Perfect.
I have resources that women can utilize and read, review for free. There's the blog, there's the newsletter, and then you also can work with me for a fee. So it just depends on what you need and what you're looking for. But the goal is to always help people with where they are and not pushing them to a particular destination. So even if you need to have a 15-minute conversation with me, I'm willing to do that too.
And one last question before we go, because I think this is really fun and important for those who have left their marriage, they are individuals now, and how do they manage their finances without a partner? And I don't mean in terms of like double income, but you talk about this idea of like a financial BFF. So somebody who is in your life that's maybe not a parent or somebody you're related to, but somebody that you trust with what passwords, information, your intentions. What's that all about? Tell our listeners, because I love this.
So I think everyone needs this, okay? If you're partnered or not, but particularly if you are not partnered. And so your financial BFF, your financial best friend for life, basically, or what I would call your financial fill-in is the person who can literally come in and step into your shoes from a financial perspective, either temporarily or maybe permanently, if something happens to you. So you are unable to fulfill your normal family CFO type duties. Yeah. You need somebody to step in and make sure the bills are paid. They need to access your accounts. Right. Again, this is someone that you know you can depend on. So it's not your flaky friend. It's your highly reliable friend. Okay. Yeah. It's also someone that you know you can trust with sensitive information. They might have access to account numbers. They might have access to social security numbers, the SSI number, whatever it is. You want to make sure you can trust them. So those are the qualifiers, okay? Yeah. And then after you figure out who that is, then you think about, okay, what's the short list? And maybe you have more than one. And that's okay. You don't need like a team of financial BFFs, but one or two people that you can trust. And if you have minor children, again, if you're unpartnered, you have minor children, you're the only person who knows everything. If you just, as you're listening to this, you think about it and say, well, who else knows how many bank accounts I have? Yeah. Who else knows like how many insurance policies I have if something happens to me and where those insurance policies are? If the answer is nobody, you need a financial fill-in or financial BFF stat. Yeah, big time. Stat. And if it's one person, then evaluate those things like, can I really trust that person? Right. Can they handle it? And do they want the job? Yeah. Now, the last piece is they need to know
ask them,
that they're
who's volunteering for this job.
I know that seems like a worse job.
If it's a two-way street, true, right? If it's a two-way street, you have a very good friend who's in a similar, maybe they're not partnered either, or whatever, and you trust them. Fine.
Listen, I don't think anyone's asking me to be their financial BFF, especially not after this episode. But yes, it is important for someone to have. You need like a backup plan. Someone who has your passwords, who can access all that information. Otherwise, where does it go? The government? Like, no thanks. The bank's just taking all your money.
Well, I mean, I guess there's wills and there's trustees and all those things, power of attorney and all. It's kind of like a little bit like power of attorney almost.
An executor.
It could be this. It could be the same person. So your financial fill-in could be your power of attorney or your executor. However, some of the information that we're talking about as far as the detail is not always covered in your estate plan documents. Right. Yeah. And so this is supplemental to that. It partners well with that information that you want to get into a bit more granular details, like 9 times out of 10, the security code for your alarm. Again, should something happen to you and someone needs to get into your house, it's probably not going to be in your estate documents. But someone needs to know the passcode to your phone. Someone might need to know that. The passcode or password to your email. Again, those things are sacred.
I don't even know that.
I can't imagine.
I have to reset it all the time. I have 75 emails. I'm like, if someone else can keep track of that for me, that would be great.
And certain email service providers allow you to set up a person to fill in should something happen to you. So if your email account goes dormant for a certain amount of time, you can designate the person who will be your fill-in through your email service provider. I know Gmail does it.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah, there are different things that you can do, again, to just protect yourself and your family. If you have life insurance, the whole point of it is that it goes to someone. Right. Well, if they don't know the policy exists, then it's a moot point.
Yeah. Right. Oh, Nikki, what a wealth of knowledge. Yes. Such great tips. Thank you so much for being on with us and for sharing all of this knowledge. We're going to put all your information, contact info into our show notes so people can get a hold of you as needed. But thank you. We really appreciate you taking the time and sharing all this brilliance with us and our listeners. So thanks for joining.
Well, you're quite welcome. It was absolutely my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So nice to meet you.
Thank you. Take care.
This This episode was written and created by Alex Howard and Amanda Silver, produced, edited, and engineered by RTF Productions. Make sure to rate and review our show if you loved it, and give us a follow on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you stream your podcast to stay up to date on all upcoming episodes. Thanks for listening, and go easy on us. We're not your ex.